Okay, lateral violence. Have you ever heard that term? I'm going to give you a little bit of history on that term. Again, this is going to be a lesson that is meant to make you reflect. The action items you may take from this is simply like journaling on some of these topics, thinking about how, maybe some experiences you've had in the past that might offer a deeper level of healing for yourself. And it might very well inform your future in this work. But the reason why I bring it up is because I really am impassioned about creating a professional space that heals from what has been done in the past. I want to really do things differently. Now, the history of the word around lateral violence is an Indigenous term. I always want to give credit where credit is due. I first heard the term lateral violence in the First Nations healthcare space. And I remember a chief standing up and saying, we're trying to build consensus at the time around, lumping all First Nations healthcare money into one pot and dispersing it equitably, right? Not equally, equitably. And you got to know the difference between the two and trusting us to do that. So we had some really interesting meetings leading up to it for years because we had to build consensus amongst 203 First Nations communities. And I remember this chief standing up and just like screaming, and he's like, they have us like laterally violent against one another. They give us like this amount of money and they have us fighting for the dollar in the middle of the table. And we like don't treat each other with like respect and love and care because of this setup. And it was like a bomb went off in my head where I was like, oh my gosh, like that's why there's like, there's a lot of repair work to do in our communities around this because of lateral violence that was created from a system of competition, of individualism. I could go on and on and on about that. But when I learned that language, I could see it play out in family dynamics. I could see it play out in political dynamics. I could see it playing out absolutely everywhere. And when I entered the mediumship space, I saw it very prevalent in the mediumship space. And I saw it in sneaky ways. I saw different, really influential teachers use other public mediums as an example of what not to do. Themselves look better. I don't know. Have I been guilty of this? Probably in the past. I try to be very mindful of not doing that. And, in the declaration, I name names and I use examples, but they're very public. There's a lot of like receipts. It's a cautionary tale. So it's not to say I haven't done this myself, but I think that you can feel an intention when somebody is trying to like cut somebody else down for the sake of like making them look better. A lot of individualism. Again, I could write a tell-all book about the space and the things that I've seen, but it's something I noticed like right away. And I saw it really prevalent in the spiritual space, especially at the level that was like above me, like ahead of me when I first came in. And I was like really kind of wondering if people really liked each other. I don't know if you've seen that with different people that collab in the space. Like, do you guys like each other? Is there real love here? And so I did witness a lot of this in the space. And that's how come I saw so little collaborating. And I honestly wanted to kind of stay in my own lane for a long time because I'd seen it so much. And, I have had a few of you in this membership who even are still here with a very prevalent medium come to me because you got shamed so publicly from somebody who had so much influence for what? To like establish a power dynamic. I seen this actually this morning online. God, I'm dropping a bunch of stuff here, but I seen I don't know who they are, but they are a little bit known, and that's not to be shady, but they obviously had like a lot of influence, and there was like a conversation going on about a certain part of mediumship, and a lot of the thought leaders are getting together and talking about like what's wrong and like how do we restore balance over here, right? And so this person got critiqued a little bit, and then their response was, "Hello, student. How did you enjoy your class last year? Do you want me to pull up your review of your class? Because you gave me glowing reviews." So, like I was like, whoa. Like this person said one thing that the comment was like a little bit biased. And this person went right to power dynamics, went right to establishing a place of authority over them. Like, and that's lateral violence because we are all peers in this space and we have a common goal. I don't care if you've been doing this 20 years versus my 10. We're here for a common goal. So that's a good example of how lateral violence takes place in that space. Like there's space for all of us to have an opinion here. And, there's enough space in the whole philosophy of this to include all of our opinions here. So just to give you a couple examples, the lateral violence too, and it might be unintentional and not meant to harm, but it can come up, and my next lesson's going to be on internal violence because this comparison and this competition, or even, you may see somebody come up and just, you have certain feelings around it, right? And I don't want you to feel bad about those feelings. That's what I'm trying to say. Those feelings come up because there is an inherent lateral violence that comes up in this space. There hasn't been a lot of peer support, root for each other, lift each other up, all boats rise together. There hasn't been a lot of that in the spiritual space, right? Think about the witch trials. Think about I'm not trying to single out women here, but we really were trained to tell on each other. You know what I mean? That created a system and an atmosphere of lateral violence. You even think about times, I love the book, The Red Tent. And it was a really hard book about, this man that had 4 wives. And it was from the lens of the wives and all the lateral violence that went on in that red tent. It's always kind of existed, but it's existed because of patriarchal systems is what I'm trying to say. So part of my devotion to rematriating mediumship is about restoring balance by growing in community, true community, a community that isn't just a workshop and we're done. This is an ongoing community. We are learning to hold space for each other through a continuum. And that is what I'm doing to restore balance and creating an atmosphere for you guys. And you guys probably don't even see it because I keep you blind from it because I'm so clear on what I want to do, because I've seen so much lateral violence that my way of balancing is not calling it out and shaming other people for the way of being, which comes from a place that's probably a little bit wounded. There's space for compassion there, right? But more coming from a place, I'm just going to create something different. And so that is, my mission of rematriating mediumship. And it's how I hope to create a generation of mediums and light workers that minimize and simmer down on the lateral violence. Curious about your experiences with this. So I was just at a First Nations, I guess it's called Indigenous Women in Entrepreneurship Conference. And I met this incredible elder from Nunavut. And she's so incredible. And in her opening ceremony, she mentioned lateral violence. And I had just taught on it through the declaration. I knew I was going to record it for a little bit of a micro lesson. And she said there are three questions to ask yourself that will cure any lateral violence out of our communities, out of our systems and our structures. Okay, 3 questions to eliminate lateral violence. Is it helpful? Is it useful? And does it come from love? Is it helpful? Is it useful? Does it come from love? So if you feel like you want to say something, right, about something, and I've screwed up, guys, okay? I've gotten this wrong many times. I'm not going to pretend like I get it all right all the time. I don't. You guys watch me. You probably see me slip a couple times too. But if you want to say something, if you want to act upon something, if you get a resistance of any kind, it doesn't mean a no. It just means let's check in with ourselves. Let's do an integrity check. If I say something, is it going to be helpful, or is it going to be useful, and or is it coming from love? Right? So one way that I've had to do this, because I was in a situation 2 months ago where I wanted to go to town on someone. I just wanted to go write out a list of all the things. And I could have done that, and I would have been in my right to do that. I would have depleted a lot of energy doing that. I would have lost a lot of power and personal power doing that. And I just had to ask myself, is there compassion here? Can I see this through the lens of love and compassion? And even just that alone. And this was months before I started putting together my class and thinking and talking about this. This is how much I know I'm living it, is because I stopped and I just said, is there space for compassion here? Is there space for love here? I was able to take a high road. I was able to maintain my professionalism, and I was able to keep my power and keep my light. And sometimes that's the choice. Sometimes that's a choice. I recently called somebody out for something they did real injustice to me, and I lost a lot of power. I was surprised. I was like, it felt good for a second, like saying something. But then when I thought about it and I sat with it, and I was like, that actually utilized a lot of life force energy from me. And I had to ask myself, it did feel good and the dopamine was hit, but is that the way that I want to exercise my life force energy? Could my life force energy be of more use, right? Could it be of more help to someone else? And could that life force energy, in fact, be used for love instead of shame or whatever it is that I did, which I'm still working on healing from? So this is my little ditties on lateral violence. So when I worked for the First Nations Health Directors Association, that's a long one. It was through the chiefs and the health directors that I first learned the term lateral violence. One thing that they did was create a declaration of lateral kindness. So if you're ever wondering where I get all my language from, a lot of it is the work I did in First Nations healthcare and listening to elders and listening to knowledge keepers and policymakers. And God, it filled me with so much hope knowing that this is the language that they're using at the government level. Like, let that be just a little symbol of hope for you. This language is becoming more common. So I hope that this language resonates with you. I'm curious about your reflections. Let me know what you think. See you next week when we talk about internal violence. I'll keep it light, I promise.